principles of Renew Ministry. These are the main principles of Renew Ministry. And so I just want to cover these so that you get a good foundation for what you're doing in a Renew Ministry session. It's like saying the conscious mind is the logical mind, the part of your mind that reasons and makes sense of things, whereas the subconscious is the more emotional mind. Doesn't use a whole lot of reason, it just kind of responds. And so it's a lot of times people will say it's kind of like head and heart. The head would be the conscious mind, the subconscious would be the heart. And that's what we're doing in Renew Ministry is, a lot of people come into a Renew Ministry session and they say, yeah, I know the truth, but it doesn't feel true. My emotional experience does not line up with my understanding of what reality is. And so that's the fight between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, or the head and the heart. If we could go to the gray matter in between the ears, it's like the conscious mind is prefrontal cortex, as the subconscious mind is more the amygdala. The amygdala is like the fear center where the emotions come out of, which kind of sits right on top of your brainstem in the back. To understand what's going on in the conscious and subconscious mind, if I could just draw this for you, and I am not an artist, so forgive me, but let's say this is your brain here. Your conscious mind is up here, kind of more in the prefrontal cortex, whereas your amygdala or your subconscious mind is more in the back, okay? I'm not speaking exact science here, but track with me. So what happens is someone will be believing a lie, and in the prefrontal cortex, they're not believing the lie there. They know God loves them here in the conscious mind, but in their subconscious mind, it feels like God is punishing them, or it feels like God's mad at them, or it feels like they're alone or worthless. It comes from here, even though here they know it's not true. What we're doing is we're actually moving the truth that they already know here in the conscious mind, and we're moving that to the subconscious mind. By that we mean in our ministry sessions, what we do is we ask the question, what would Jesus say or do to you, or how would Jesus interact with you? Okay, we are not advocating that we are adding to Scripture in any way. We're not advocating that you are receiving a divine revelation from heaven here. That's not what we're advocating. What we're advocating for is you have a personal relationship with Jesus. You have read the Scriptures. You have heard the stories. You know how Jesus interacted with lepers. You know how Jesus interacted with Mary and Martha. You know how Jesus interacted with Peter and the disciples. And so you can piece together from what you know in your prefrontal cortex, you can know and understand how Jesus would interact with you if you are sitting feeling like the woman who was caught in adultery. You know how he would interact with you. And so what you're doing is you're moving what you know in your conscious mind to the subconscious part of your mind. Okay? This is not mysticism. We're not receiving divine revelation. Principle here is building emotion and following it. Okay, this is so incredibly important in our Renew Ministry sessions. Why? Because emotion is that's where the subconscious mind is. The subconscious mind is emotion. And so you can look at it as when you're afraid of something. If a bear were to walk into the room and you felt scared, all of a sudden your body has a physical reaction to that. You didn't choose to have that reaction in your prefrontal cortex. You didn't say, okay, now it's time for me to be scared and I'm gonna make myself physically react with the emotion of fear. It's not something you chose to do. What happened was the bear walks into the room and from your subconscious, your emotions came up. It just happened down here. And so what we're trying to do is engage the subconscious mind as much as we can. The more we are in the subconscious, the better work we're going to do. If all we're doing is talking logically through someone's problem, we're just staying up here, and that's not going to do any good. We need to be in the emotions. We need to be in the subconscious mind in order to see them transformed with God's truth, because they already have the truth here. They don't need it here. You can keep telling them that truth there, but it's not going to do any good. They need the truth here. And so what we have to do is build the emotion and follow it, which also means we don't follow logic in a session. It doesn't work. If you follow logic, you're just going to stay up here in the brain. What you have to do is asking that person, okay, how do you feel? And they answer, that makes me feel sad. Okay, why do you feel sad? Because I felt like he was going to abandon me. Okay, well, if he's going to abandon you, how does that make you feel? And then the emotions that starts becoming more and more real, you'll see the person get more and more emotional. And what they'll start to do is they'll start to say more lies. Okay, and that's how you know you're in the subconscious mind. The conscious mind, nope, that stays in truth. No, I know that's not true. The truth is blah, blah, blah. But the subconscious mind, when they start expressing lies, that's when you know you're getting into the subconscious mind, and they're saying things out of an emotion that's happening there. Another thing is that in building emotion, there's very specific questions that we ask in order to build emotion. One of the questions we ask is, as Jesus sees you, how does he feel towards you? You want to know the emotion of Jesus. And so when we are thinking about how would Jesus feel towards us, that builds the emotion. A lot of times I've taught it this way of understanding kind of what happens in a romantic comedy, because that's what a romantic comedy does, or just a romance movie, I guess, where you have the emotion building. And so in the movies, you'll see the man and the woman, and they start to fall in love, and then something bad happens. There's some sort of conflict that separates the two of them, and then you're hoping as you're watching the movie that somehow, some way, they'll come back together. And so the movie presents the emotion of the man, and it presents the emotion of the woman. And as that happens, we get more emotionally engaged in the story. And so the same goes true here in the Renew Ministry session. When we ask, as Jesus sees you there, how does he feel towards you? When we ask that question, it builds that emotion. It builds that story that they're living out right in front of you. And then the next question that we ask is, okay, how do you feel towards Jesus? And it builds that emotion as well, because the person, when they're stuck sitting inside their heavy, weighty, painful emotions, they're not naturally going to think about, how does Jesus feel towards me? And so when you ask that question, they're forced to go, oh my goodness, he has tremendous compassion for me. He has tremendous forgiveness for me. He is upset that I feel as bad as I do. And when they realize that, sometimes that's when they break. That's when emotionally they just, the waterworks turn on, because they realize, maybe sometimes for the first time in that spot in their subconscious mind, the love of God, the forgiveness of God, the grace of God, the protection of God, the warmth of God. And then you ask them that next question of, well, how do you feel towards him? And that wakes up their emotion of, I want this amazing God to minister to me here. I want his forgiveness. I want him to interact with me, and that builds that emotion. So we build emotion as much as we can. We follow the emotion. We figure out where the lies are coming from, and then we bring Jesus there. We build that emotion. We ask them how they're doing, build that emotion. So you want the emotion to be as big as you can, and stick with it and follow it. which brings us to the visual people or the non-emotional people, quote. Sometimes you'll have somebody that's very visual, and a visual person can process, everyone processes differently in Renew Ministry sessions, but sometimes a visual person will actually end up being one of the easiest people that you'll process with, because they're so engaged in what they're seeing in their mind's eye. It's pretty crazy. Sometimes you'll have people following dragons around, or from Lord of the Rings, Smeagol's and Gollums, or bears or tigers, or the characters in their mind. Their mother will end up taking on the form of a lion, or their dad will take the form of a fishing boat. I mean, you just never know how things are going to look in the mind's eye of the person that you're working with. But don't be afraid of the visualizations. Don't be afraid of that. Go ahead and interact with it in the session, and we'll do some more training on that. But I just want to let you know that there's visual people out there, and it's I would say maybe a quarter of the people are very visual, and the best way that they process is processing it visually. So just be aware of that. We'll talk about that more in future videos. Another thing is just non-emotional people. Like I said, everybody processes a little bit different, but there's some people out there that just don't physically show their emotions, or they don't show it much. They'll be at a level 10 in their emotions, and all you see is maybe just a little bit of a twinkle in their eye, like maybe they're starting to well up, but their emotions are a 10. And so we have a question that's just helpful for people to ask when you're first working with a person and they're not emoting a whole lot. They're not presenting it anyway a whole lot. You can ask them the question, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how connected are you with that emotion? And if they say a 7 or above, keep working. Keep following the emotion. If they say 6 or below, then what you're dealing with most likely is a guardian, and they're protecting themselves somehow. That's why we call it a guardian. And so we'll work with guardians, and we'll do more training on what guardians look like, what they are, how they operate, why they are the way they are, and we'll work through that. But don't be afraid of visual people, and don't be afraid of the non-emotional people. You can work with everyone, and this does work with all types, everybody that processes differently. Divide and conquer. This is a huge, and we'll keep talking about this. This is going to pop up in the other training videos, but divide and conquer. What happens very often is as we get into the subconscious mind, a person can start to get overwhelmed. So you want as much emotion as you can get without overwhelm. That's what you want. You want to bring them to the point as close to, you want as much emotion as you can, but if they get overwhelmed, then, we need to back off a little bit. And that's where we divide and conquer. If you've got somebody that's feeling worthless, and they're feeling angry, and they're feeling confused at the same time, too much. What you need to do when they're feeling angry, worthless, and confused is you need to divide and conquer those three. So you divide and conquer, and you say, okay, well, because 2 of those are guardians. Anger is a guardian, confusion is a guardian. So what you need to do is say, okay, well, let's take that anger and let's isolate that, and let's bring Jesus just to that part of you. You divide that off so it's isolated by itself, and they're just focused on the one. You conquer the anger, then you say, okay, let's look at that confused part. Let's bring Jesus to the confused part, and you conquer the anger. And now the only thing that's left is that worthless part, and now you can minister to that. So divide and conquer, that's going to come up all the time. Lastly, please just be tenacious. Be tenacious. Keep doing this. I can give you all the training videos in the world, and I can give you all the insight in the world, and you can have all the knowledge about this that you can possibly have, but you're going to learn the most just by jumping in. Just dive in head first and start doing it. Start working on it, start learning it, start honing your skills. Get stuck. Get stuck and learn how to get yourself out. I remember years ago when I first started doing this, it's a very intimidating process. It is. You have all these fears in your head. You'll be afraid, oh my goodness, I'm going to mess somebody up, or I'm going to lead someone into their deep pain and then I'm going to leave them there. We're going to get stuck there and they're going to end up leaving my house or my office or the living room or the kitchen table. They're going to leave feeling way worse than they did when they came in. And yeah, that's a scary thought. It is. And not only that, but you're going to feel like a failure. You know, it's if I lead them into that pain, or we just get stuck, or there's all these guardians that I'm not identifying and I'm not good enough at it yet, it can just feel like, okay, I'm screwing up. I'm the problem here. And the thing that you want to be in sessions as best you can, what you want more than anything else, is to be able to relax and just calm down and connect with the person in front of you. To be able just to focus on them. You're not thinking about you. You're not thinking about your emotions. You're not thinking about how bad you're going to screw this up. You're just focused on them and their pain and compassion. Don't be surprised as you do this more and more the more you connect with other people, the more and more you actually can end up being ministered to, because you're just connecting with them. And don't be surprised, you'll end up crying with them, you know. That's very common. So be tenacious. Be aware that you can't fail, okay? You can't fail. Anytime we are talking about people's emotions, we are stepping forward. We are making progress. If all you do is identify a horrible, painful place and they realize just how bad it hurt, if that's all you do and then it really hurts, that's a good thing. And try again next week. Bring them back in, get back into that pain and start hunting around again. But just be tenacious. Just jump in and keep trying. Another aspect of being tenacious is understanding the quickest route from point A to point B in a Renew Ministry session. Okay, so let me oversimplify this for us. Okay, let's say that you need to get from Cedar Rapids, Iowa to Chicago, Illinois. Obviously, the best route is the most direct route. Now, what does Chicago, Illinois represent? Chicago, Illinois represents a person who comes in for Renew Ministry, and you're able to identify what those bottom identity lies are and inside their subconscious, and you're able to bring Jesus to that spot to have Jesus reveal the truth that they need in that spot. Healing, right? Transformation. That's what Chicago, Illinois represents. The best route is the most direct route. You're avoiding the tolls, you're avoiding the wrong turns, you're avoiding construction, right? You're doing everything and just you get there quickly and pain-free, you know, or as pain-free as possible. That's the best route from Cedar Rapids to Chicago. Sometimes when we're in a Renew Ministry session, we end up working with someone that, oh, I haven't worked with someone like this before. And so I'm trying to figure them out. So it's a little more difficult, or maybe you're just really new at this and you're not an expert at identifying guardian lies or identifying God lies or things like that. And so you end up, instead of the direct route to Chicago, you end up, whoops-a-daisy, now you're down here in St. Louis, Missouri. Whoops, okay. So in the session, you know, you kind of are sensing, okay, I think we're kind of getting a little bit lost here. This happens all the time, okay? Kind of getting lost here, and so you got to kind of stop and take a time out, assess, okay, we're not taking the most direct route to Chicago. So we found ourselves here. We've got to figure out, reorient ourselves, and okay, there's Chicago, and then you come back up. Is it the most direct route? No. But did you get to Chicago? Yes. And that is a good thing. Sometimes in a session, you're on your way to Chicago and then all of a sudden they say something or they do something and it just derails you and you end up going the wrong way, right? And you end up heading off and all of a sudden you find yourself in Denver, Colorado, and you're like, okay, we have got to do something about this. And so you reorient yourself and you start heading back towards the right direction. How do you do that? By finding the emotion and building the emotion. As long as you're following the emotion, you're heading to Chicago. You're going in the right direction, at least, okay? So you find the emotion, you start heading back to Chicago, and then you end up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, because you kind of lost your way there. Okay, you reorient yourself, you find the emotion, you start heading back down, and you end up in Chicago, okay? So don't worry. One of the most important things about being tenacious is just keep doing it. You're gonna get lost. You're gonna take the wrong route sometimes. We've kind of taught it like you can be a good dentist or you can be a bad dentist, okay, in Renew Ministry sessions. A good dentist in a Renew Ministry session is going to take them, the most direct route. So they're going to put the Novocaine in the right spot. They're going to find where the cavity is really quickly, and they're not going to do anything unnecessary to cause you more pain. They're not going to ask you really crazy questions and interview you while your mouth is gaping wide open and drool's coming out of the side of your mouth, right? That's a good dentist. Find the problem, identify it, put the Novocaine where it needs to be, fix it as quickly as possible. Quickly, pain-free. That's a good dentist. A bad dentist, well, they end up interviewing you while you're drooling, and they end up putting the Novocaine in the wrong spot, or not enough Novocaine, or they identify the wrong, they think it's a cavity and it's not, or the root canal needs to be, whatever. So they end up doing all this unnecessary stuff, and you end up having a bad dentist because it takes a whole lot longer and there's a whole lot more pain. So you're going to start in this Renew Ministry training. You're going to start as a bad dentist. So just be ready for that. You're not going to be super good at it. You're not going to be able to identify the God lies and the guardian lies, the guardians, as quickly as you need to. And sometimes you'll end up losing the emotion and you'll end up going the wrong way. That's okay. Just assess where you're at, find the emotion, and start heading that direction again, okay? So be tenacious. You cannot